In this video, I want to talk about some of the basics of moving and rotating objects within Rhino. Up until this point, we've talked about the interface, how to create geometry, and how to navigate within the model space. You may be at a point now where you may want to move objects around within your scene in order to better organize them within the model space. In order to move an object, there are two ways. There's really more than two ways, but there are two main ways to accomplish this. So one of them, I can easily just click on my object by selecting it, and then I can drag it to various points on my screen. So that is probably our fast and easy way to move things. The other more precise way to move them would be similar to our copy command that we talked about in video number 2 or 3. So in order to use the more precise movements, we'll use the move command. So that's M-O-V-E. And then follow it up by hitting return or enter. And if I come down here to my toolkit, I talked about where the option was for copying using the toolkit icon. There's also one for moving, and then we'll get to the rotate 2D one as well. So once I've typed that in or clicked on the icon for it, my command prompt changes for me and it says select an object to move. And so once I've selected my object I want to move, then I can press enter to confirm my selection. And that's good if I wanted to select more than one thing. And then it asks me to pick the point where I want to move from. And so this is where it becomes very similar to our copy command. I can choose any one of the geometry points on here that fits with my object snaps if I want to work with one of those. So let's say I want to choose my top left corner and grab from there. Then I can move it to various snaps within the scene, or I could plug in a measurement. And let's say that I wanted to move my square 5 inches. I could type in 5 and say enter. And similar to when creating a line, I can see that I now have a 5-inch radius that goes around my starting point here. And I can just click to set where I want my square to be placed. I can also use this in conjunction with my ortho, and I can even do this mid-command. I can come down to the bottom of my screen and check the ortho toggle. And now I can lock my square movement in by 90-degree increments. So if I was to zoom out, you could probably see this a bit clearer. I can choose a spot around my original location for that to move it to 5 inches over. So I'll go ahead and click and place that. So that's our move command, really similar to the copy that we've done so far. The next command that can come in really useful for us is the rotate command. And so in order to use the rotate command, I can type in rotate, or again, I can come to my toolkit here and I can go to the rotate 2D command. It's important to differentiate. There is a rotate 3D that gets more advanced that won't work for us in this setup right now. But if I type in just a basic rotate, I can say enter. And then I have to once again select the object I want to rotate. And then following the command prompt here, it says press enter when done. From here, I have to specify the center of my rotation. And I can quickly access the center of my square by coming down to my object snaps at the bottom. And there is a snap for center points. So I'll go ahead and check that. And I'm going to turn off some of these extras that I have turned on. I'll leave on my end snap and my center snap here. And you're perfectly fine to be doing all of this in the middle of a command as well. So in order to access my center of rotation, if I wanted it in the center of my object, with all of my other snaps turned off, I can essentially hold my cursor at any point that's not an end point. And once I go to the end point, then my object snap transitions to the end snap. So I could rotate from an end point. And once I've chosen, let's say I chose my bottom left endpoint here, then Rhino shifts and asks me for either an angle or a first reference point. And so I want to dive into this idea of a first reference point. What Rhino is actually asking us now is that it sort of wants us to consider torque. And so if I was to consider where I grab the other part of my object from, it will shift based along there. So I'm going to go along the bottom of my rectangle, and I'll click on the bottom right of it and I'll have that, that line that I've drug out, that will be my reference point here. So now when I go to, let me turn my ortho off. So now once I've turned my ortho off, I can swing it to various angles. And I could click to place it at one of those, or I could even type in something like, let's say I wanted it in more of a diamond position instead of the very balanced square. I could just type in 45 and say enter, and it'll rotate 45 degrees for me. If I wanted to reset it back to normal, I could still type in rotate once more and say enter. I could choose my center of rotation. So this time I'm going to go from the center point. So I'll go ahead and just hover towards the outer edge of my object. And again, that's how I would access my center point. Unintuitively, you don't just go to the center of the object, you have to go to its edges. And I'll go ahead and select once I see the CEN tag pop up next to my cursor. So I'll click to place that. And I'm going to turn on my midpoint snap now. And what I'll do with my midpoints on is that will let me go to the center of any of my lines. And so once I'm at my midpoint here, I'll go ahead and click. And now I'm rotating my square from its center point. And if I wanted to get this back perfectly horizontal and flat again, I might want to turn on my ortho. And that way I can snap it down right back to where it was. Or I could uncheck ortho and I could type in 45 once again and say enter, and it'll rotate right back to where it started. So a couple ways to use your move and rotate tools. You could absolutely freehand it by clicking and dragging if you need to do things quickly and the number isn't as necessary. Or you could be really precise about it and move things to very strong dimensions if you need to.